We'll start in 3, 2, 1. Imagine one day the election of the leader of a country is only chosen on the grounds of he has a political background. Will it help in the course of a country? It is a centerty in the progress of a country. In effect, leaders or formal leaders of a country, such as Tharman of Singapore, Mario Draghi of Italy, even LIEVENUS BAGA of Korea, have several leaders who do not have a political background, but they succeed, they develop rapidly, they were victorious. So, ladies and gentlemen, in here, we, as the leader of opposition, proud to oppose to the motion, which is this House would require political candidates to pass a political competency test in order to run for office, not just for the sake of it, but for the sake of a country in the terms and justice. The government always claims that the current state of political nihilism is due to the ill-considered statement and the short-term policies of the current government. And that is true. It arises because of a lack of leadership. But unfortunately, the meaning of leadership as understood by the government is wrong. So that the mechanism offered by the government does not solve anything. The first point that they offered, they will create rules that every candidate must pass a test going to the things like sociology, economic, etc. But what is the correlation of these things to a leadership? Whether these things can be the maximum benchmark of leadership, politics, even itself leadership. So let us focus on what and why we did not approve this motion. This motion was born out of the people's distrust of the system offered by the government, supported by cases that became a public question regarding the government's connection to the case. This motion is very important to discuss because it is related to the progress and control of the state in a country. Therefore, we define the political competency test as a means of defining an individual's ability in the political field. We also define past as being able to understand straightforwardly related to the political understanding both in the field of understanding the people, understanding in the field of progress, making logical decisions, and ideas that advance and benefit. We have also limited the term of office to national positions such as president, prime minister, and members of national parliament. With the current condition, where being a candidate is the rights of everyone, it does not only apply to people who are in the field such as the rights of Jokowi as president, Farrell as parliament, and Komeng as minister. This is a proof that a leader should not be limited by a political background. Here, as the people say that the existence of the system will narrow the space for political movement. Candidates outside politics such as workers, farmers, and minorities are eliminated, even though they know the realities that really happen in the field, what weaknesses and advantage. So today I have two main arguments that I deliver from to the motion. The first is competency test can be used as a political weapon. Second, it violates the fundamental right to run for office. Let's examine on the first argument. Competency test can be used as a political weapon. A political competency test might sound neutral in a theory, but in practice it's opened the door to political abuse. Who create the test, who decide what counts as a competent? It's not the people, it's those in power. First, the test question can be designed with ideological bias. A candidate who supports a radical reform or represent marginalized communities may fail, not because they are unqualified, but because their views don't align with the political majority. Second, the scoring process can be easily manipulated. Without full transparency, those in power can quietly disqualify their opponents under the guise of failing the test. Third, the timing of the test and the release of its results can be intentionally delayed or placed too close to election deadlines, limiting the ability of rejected candidates to appeal or prepare alternatives. In the end, this test become a gatekeeping tool not to ensure quality leadership, but to eliminate political threats that is not democracy and that is legal suppression. My second argument is about it violates the fundamental right to run for office. At the heart of democracy lies a once scared idea that every citizen has the right to run for office and to be judged by people, not by bureaucratic exam. A political competency tax turns democracy into a filtered contest where only the educated elites or acceptable candidate pays. It sends a dangerous message that farmers, laborers, and grassroots leaders are not smart enough to lead. But leadership is not only about textbook knowledge, it's about character, empathy, and the trust of the people. Great leaders like a Nelson Mandela or even modern example like a Jokowi were not products of an academic system but of real struggle, real representation. This test will only silence the voice of the marginalized, broke ordinary citizens and erodes the core democratic principle that the power belongs to the people, not to the panel of examiners. So for this motion, I bring two mechanisms for just my arguments. The first mechanism is about democratic filtering through public discourse and media. Second is strengthening political education and civic literacy among voters. First, democratic filtering through public discourse and media. Instead of filtering candidates through as a standardized task, we let the democratic process work naturally through public discourse, debates, and media coverage. Explanation: in a functioning democracy unfilled or incompetent candidates are naturally filtered by public security, media investigation, and voter evaluation. The public and the press act as watchdogs. If a candidate shows lack of understanding of dangerous ideas, they are exposed in the debates and campaigns, and voters can reject them without the need for a test. This protects both competence and democracy. Voters still hold the power, but unfit candidates can still be held accountable through exposure and pressure. Second, strengthening political education and civic literacy among voters. Shift the focus from testing the politicians to educating the people, creating an informed electorate who can access competency themselves. If the question is incompetent leaders being elected, the root cause is often uninformed voting, not just unfit candidates. We tackle the real issue by investing in a civic education, public political literacy programs, and access to clear, unbiased political information. Informed citizens are empowered to identity manipulation, democracy, or lack of skill in a candidate, making democracy smarter from the ground up. This builds long-term democracy, resilience without adding new barriers or elite filters into who might run for office. So, ladies and gentlemen, the government proposal dressed itself as a solution, but in reality, it opens the door to authoritarianism, disguised as a meritocracy. We have proven that this task could easily be politicized, weaponized to exclude dissenters, minorities, or even brilliant leaders who challenge the status quo. It directly violates the democratic core that the people hold the right to choose their leaders, not an elite institution through a so-called task. Instead of suppressing candidates, let the people be the judge through debates, media security, and free election. The path to better leadership lies not in restriction, but in participation, education, and transparency. That is why we, as the opposition, strongly reject this motion. Thank you.